For this assignment, our group read Antigone by Sophocles.
The play Antigone occurs in the city of Thebes. The play is mainly about Antigone. The play is mainly about the tragedy of Antigone, although there are other minor tragedies that do occur. Antigone has a sister Ismene and two brothers Eutocles and Polynices. The two sisters had just lost Eutocles and Polynices, who had killed each other during the war against the Thebes and the Argos. Polynices had betrayed the Thebes by bringing in the army of Argos into Thebes, and in the process of Eutocles defending the Thebes, had gotten killed. To honor the death of Eutocles, King Creon decided that Eutocles was going to be buried with honor, and Polynices was not going to be buried because he had betrayed the Thebes. Creon put in an order stating that anyone who mourned or buried Polynices will be stoned to death. So when Antigone approaches her sister Ismene, asking her to help bury their brother, Ismene refuses. Antigone goes ahead and buries as Antigone goes ahead, and as she's burying her brother, she's caught by one of Creon's guards. Antigone is taken to Creon for sentencing. Creon then sentences Antigone to death by stoning, but puts her in a cave. Hammon, Creon's son, begs her father to consider the danger of putting Antigone to death because it was her right to bury the dead, and this will go against the gods. Creon refuses to listen to Hammon, who he just sees as a young boy who is trying to educate an older man. Therefore, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Tiresias comes in to warn Creon, telling him the fury and death is to come into his family if he does not release Antigone and if Polynices is not buried. Creon refuses to listen to Tiresias and claims that Tiresias has been bribed. By the time Creon had decided to bury Polynices and release Antigone, it was too late, as Antigone had hanged herself, and when Hammon saw Antigone had hanged herself, he killed himself. As the death of Hammon is being told to Creon, his wife eavesdrops and hears the conversation. She's then told that Hammon has killed himself and then goes and kills herself.
There are many characters we've read about who can be connected to those in Antigone. Niobe and Creon can be compared because of their refusal to give the gods their due worship. Their children and spouses were taken from them as punishment. Pyramus and Thisbe can be connected to Antigone and Haman because their families take their loves from them, and the devastation over losing their love causes them to take their lives.
The other connections are Bellerophon, where the king decides he should be put to death, but will not complete the action himself because the people love him. He sends him to Iobates to die instead, and this is similar to how Creon will not kill Antigone himself because the people object to her death. Instead, he puts her in a cave and hopes she will die there, and he cannot be held responsible. Also, this is similar to Achilles, where Achilles stood by his decision to not fight beyond the point where it was reasonable. Creon also refused to change his mind regardless of how many people urged him to, and they both lost loved ones because of their stubbornness. The simple choices that seem right at the time could have dire consequences. Achilles knows and accepts that after killing Hector, he will die by his fate. By doing so, he he will earn great honor. Antigone is fated to die, but through death she will earn great honor too. As quoted, yet in death you will have your fame, to have gone like a god to your fate, in living and dying alike. Antigone is like Achilles, has accepted death. Antigone also says, but let me and my own ill counseling suffer nothing as great as dying with a lack of grace.
One of the connections that we found between the play and one of the texts that we studied, Iliad, was the similarities between Creon and Agamemnon. Both leaders are very arrogant, and they believe their word is final, and no one and the rules is law. You can also see some similarities between the two books, whereby both subjects in the books who are Antigone goes against Creon, and Achilles goes against Agamemnon.
For connections in modern culture, there is the Hunger Games, where both take place following a major rebellion within their respective societies. The characters are dealing with consequences of the rebellion. Both have a strong female lead who defies the authority of the governing body, regardless of almost certain death that they will face for such a decision. They choose to follow their morals instead of blindly following. The arrogance of both rulers lead to their eventual destruction. The inability of either to see that their leadership was tenuous allowed discontent to overthrow the authority.
Modern culture connections that we saw is feminism, whereby Antigone is portrayed as a modern woman who is not afraid to stand for what she knows. She knows it's wrong. She knows she's going to die by stoning, yet she did not care to defy Creon. In the Greeks, a woman was just told and listened and obeyed. But Antigone defies the Greek woman. Dictatorship is also portrayed, whereby Creon is seen as a dictator and his word was law. He did not want to sympathize with Antigone, being that she has lost her brother, and the fact that burying her brother was honoring the dead and respecting the gods. So when Antigone defies him, he kills her. He sentences her to death. This is similar to one of a modern dictator that we know, Fidel Castro, who silenced anyone that questioned him and ruled with an iron fist.
The book Home Fire is a story inspired by Antigone. The characters are based on those from Antigone, and the stories are similar, with two families, one devastated and the other gaining power, a terrorist attack against their home state, and clashing duties to family, faith, and nation. The play Too Much Memory is a modern adaptation of Antigone, which is a commentary on the George W. Bush administration. It reflects the same climate of civil disobedience and questions personal conscience in the same way that Antigone does.